All right. So first, tell me how long you've been a Met fan for.
I've been a Met fan since 1973, so I was 9 years old. So I'm 55 now, so I've been a Met fan for about 46 years. In 1973, they played the Oakland A's in the World Series, and that's when I became a Met fan.
And what drew you to the team initially, besides that World Series?
The fact that they had Tom Seaver. I became a huge Tom Seaver fan. He was one of the elite pitchers of that time from the 70s into the 80s, and I just fell in love with Seaver, and that's what drew me to be a Met fan.
Okay. And you've been to a couple playoff games. How many playoff games did you say you've been to?
I've been to the first bunch of playoff games I went to was in the 80s when they had the revival, and I went to probably about five or six then, and then I went to a couple in the 2000s. So from the Mets standpoint, I've probably gone to about six or seven different playoff games.
And can you talk about the experience that you get going to a baseball playoff game versus a regular season game and maybe another sports playoff game if you've ever been to those?
Oh, it's not even close. It's not even close. Especially being a Met fan, we don't get the opportunity that often to go to playoff games every year like some other organizations do. So when it does happen, it's a totally different experience from a regular season. The crowd is just revved up from pitch one, and I've always said, being a Met fan and being in New York, it's the greatest atmosphere in the world to go to Shea Stadium and now Citi Field and go to a playoff game because Met fans are really passionate fans because we don't win that often. So when playoff games come around, we take it really seriously, and it's an event to go to a Met playoff game.
Okay, so you've been to a playoff game in the 80s and now in the present day. So first talk about the 86 season and what that playoff run was like and what the atmosphere was like and how much you paid for tickets and things like that.
The '86 playoff run was incredible. They had not been good for about 10 or 12 years. From 73 through the early 80s, they were a terrible team, and they became good again in 84, built up to 86. 86, they had a tremendous team. The entire season, they won the division easily. The entire season was just like one long party leading up to the playoffs. I went to a game against Houston, one of the playoff games, and then got tickets calling on the phone in Ticketmaster. It was 1986. The only way we could get tickets was calling up on the phone. Finally got through, and I ended up getting tickets to Game 7. Being a sports fan like I am and being a baseball fan, there is no greater experience than going to Game 7 in New York City in a World Series. And it's a memory that I could tell you every single thing that happened that night, every pitch of that game. It was the craziest game I've ever been to, and the fact that they won was just unbelievable. It was only their second World Series, and that's the last time they won. So the whole process was just incredible compared to any sporting event I've ever gone to in any other sport: baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer. Nothing came remotely close to going to Game 7 of a World Series in New York City.
And how much did you pay for that World Series?
That World Series ticket was $35, and I sat field level, last row, directly over first base, and that was a $35 ticket.
And I'm guessing it was worth it.
It was worth every penny that I paid for that ticket. That was actually the face value ticket. I still have that ticket, and it was a $35 seat, and that was a field level seat in 1986.
And so 30 years later, you go to the 20, or almost 30 years later, you go to the 2015
Correct.
World Series. How much did you pay for those tickets?
Those tickets.
And how'd you get them as well?
The way that changed is there was a lot less tickets available in 2015 than it was in 1986. In 1986, it seemed like a lot more fans got to go to the games than it did in 2015. So with the short number of seats actually available, the only way I could get those tickets was a friend of mine. We went through StubHub, and I paid $700 for that World Series ticket, which was Game 4 of the 2015 World Series versus Kansas City. Sat in the upper deck, about 15 rows in the upper deck over third base. It wasn't a horrible seat, but it was an upper deck seat that I paid $700 for. To be honest, the experience was just as great. It was kind of a run that wasn't expected. They were a 500 team halfway through the season, so it was an incredible run. And like I said, when you're a Met fan, they've only been to 5 World Series in 50 plus years. So when you get the opportunity to go to a World Series, you got to take advantage of it. And even though it was an incredible amount of money, it was still worth it to go to a World Series game in New York.
Perfect.